Welcome. In this session, I'm going to begin with a new chapter, Plant Kingdom. And before I discuss the various groups of Plant Kingdom, first we will see briefly about classification. So many scientists, earlier they tried to classify plants and they used different systems to classify plants. So here the first system that was used was artificial system of classification. So this in course of time was replaced with the natural system of classification, and now recently we have is phylogenetic system of classification. Okay, so in the very much earlier days they used artificial system of classification, and then slowly it was replaced with natural system of classification, and at present we are using the phylogenetic system of classification. So the phylogenetic system of classification is the recent system of classification. So it's a recent system of classification. Okay, so we'll discuss all these things in detail. Let's see the first one, artificial system of classification. So here under artificial system of classification, those scientists who classified the plants, they actually given equal weightage. Okay, so given equal weightage to vegetative characters. So they have given equal weightage to vegetative characters and also to sexual characters. Also to sexual characters. Okay, and the vegetative characters they included gross, superficial, morphological characters. So they included only gross superficial morphological characters. And those gross superficial morphological characters were like habit, which means whether they are trees, shrubs. Okay, so that is a habit. Okay, so they considered whether they're herbs, trees, or shrubs, and then they also considered the color. Okay, and then even the number and shape of leaves, like this, etc., they have considered. So these are all called gross superficial morphological characters. So here these superficial morphological characters, we cannot rely on them because they will change in course of time depending on the environmental factor. So if environment changes, then the gross superficial morphological characters will also change. Okay, that was the problem with this artificial system of classification. Even the father of botany, whose name is Theophrastus, so is father of botany. So he also used this artificial system of classification, which means while classifying the plants in his time, they used only these gross superficial morphological characters and the sexual characters, and they have given equal weightage to both of them. Next, coming to Linnaeus. So here, Linnaeus is the first person to identify the importance of flower and fruit structure. Okay, so Linnaeus was first to identify the importance of flower and fruit structure. Okay, so of course, while classifying the plants, Linnaeus also followed the same system, that is artificial system of classification. But the Linnaeus system of classification, so his classification, okay, to some extent is natural system of classification. So a fragment of his classification is natural system of classification, and the Linnaeus classification was the last of those artificial system of classifications. Okay, so his classification was last of artificial system of classification. Now we are not using this artificial system of classification anymore, okay, anywhere in the world. Okay, it's only the linear system of classification was the last of artificial system of classifications. Okay, only a fragment of this classification is natural system of classification. Okay, as okay, so considered the flower and fruit structures. Then the next one about the natural system of classification. About natural system of classification. Okay, so coming to this natural system of classification, right? So they considered the natural affinities among organisms. So they considered natural affinities, affinities which means the similarities, okay, between the groups of organisms. So they consider that natural affinities. And okay, uh, not only external features, so they considered even external features. They considered external features, and they also considered the internal features. So they considered natural affinities, they considered external features, they also have taken into consideration the internal features. So these internal features will include like the ultra structure of the cell, okay, the plant cells, or how it is, or okay, so that will give a very clear cut idea between the members, okay, of different groups, whether they belong to same or different. So that is ultra structure of the cell they have taken. Then even the anatomy of the plant, okay, so the types of tissues, whether they are present, okay, how they are present, whether they have vascular tissues or don't have vascular tissues, all that, that is anatomy, okay, also they have considered. And then they also considered embryology. So embryology is study of embryos, is study of embryos. Okay, so the development of embryos also they have seen clearly. Okay, and you can see in case of angiosperms, we came to know presence of two cotyledons. We classified them as dicotyledons, only one cotyledon, monocots. Okay, like this, even there is a difference in the development of embryos between different groups of plants. So they also considered embryology. And then they also considered the phytochemistry. So here means whatever the chemical substances, okay, present in plants. Okay, so what the cell wall composition is made up of. Okay, so what chemicals are present in the cell wall, that those things also they have considered, and that part will come under phytochemistry. And okay, so embryology, they included embryology and anatomy. Okay, this we can consider as internal morphology. Internal morphology, where the morphology we can divide into external and internal morphology. They not only included external morphology, they also considered internal morphology. Okay, so these are all internal features. Okay, the external features, this I'll mention as external morphology. Okay, and natural affinities, okay, between different members. So all they have considered, and this is the part of a natural system of classification. And first, the system of classification, such a natural system of classification was actually given by, okay, two persons. So such system of classification, that is natural system of classification, was followed by it means that they used all these characters to classify the plants. So that was done by, okay, uh, George Bentham. So George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooker are the two persons. So in short, we call it Bentham and Hooker classification. Bentham and Hooker classification. So the Bentham and Hooker classification is a natural system of classification. Okay. Now, not only these features we are considering, now we have included one more feature under this, is the evolutionary history, and then we started calling it a phylogenetic system of classification. So let's look at the phylogenetic system of classification. So all these characters we require external, internal, okay, and along with that we are also considering the evolutionary history of organisms. So phylogenetic system of classification. Okay, so the phylogenetic system of classification, right, it considers evolutionary history of organisms. So it considers evolutionary history of okay, organisms. Of course, here the organisms are plants. We need to consider the evolutionary history of okay, plants, right? Evolutionary history, which means the lineages. So say suppose here there is a plant, and in course of time it got diversified to form into two plants. Okay, say this is called ancestral plant, and this ancestral plant, okay, diversified to form a species A and species B in course of time. Okay, so this we call it evolution. Of course, in the second year, still we did not study about evolution. So there we'll understand about this evolution, and that evolution is very important to consider. Okay, so not only the external, internal features, we also need to consider the evolutionary history of organisms. So that system of classification, okay, is called phylogenetic system of classification. And such system of classification in plants, okay, so in plant classification was given by, okay, two persons, Adolf Engler. So Adolf Engler, and one more person named okay, Carl Anton Prandtl. So these are the two persons who gave the phylogenetic system of classification. So in simple, uh, the system of their classification is called Engler and Prandtl, okay, system of classification. So they classified the plants even including the evolutionary relationships of plant species. Okay, now, so that's about the three systems: the artificial, natural, and the phylogenetic system of classification. And not only this, there are other methods from where we get information which can actually help to classify the plants, okay, or other organisms. Here, okay, those methods are especially useful when there is no fossil evidences. Okay, we know that whatever that earlier species evolved, they diversified and formed many different species. Okay, so we need to identify their relationships and group them together. Okay, that is what to keep all those organisms in a order, so that's what we call systematics. Okay, and that is possible by using this evolutionary history. So when we consider the evolutionary history is what we call the systematics. Okay, right. The systematic arrangement of all organisms based on their evolutionary histories. Now, I told you that there are other sources which give actually information and will help us to classify the plants or any other organisms when fossil evidences are not available. Okay, how we know that evolution has taken place? So there are evidences for the evolution. So those evidences we classified actually into indirect evidences and direct evidences. And direct evidences are fossils. So they are fossils, okay. And when those fossils are not available, we need to get some indirect evidences. So that those evidences are actually provided by, okay, some methods like numerical taxonomy. So numerical taxonomy, then cytotaxonomy, and chemotaxonomy. Chemotaxonomy. So numerical taxonomy, cytotaxonomy, and chemotaxonomy are various methods which actually help in giving information, especially when there is no fossil evidences. Okay, so these, okay, play important role, okay, while classifying the organisms, while classifying organisms, okay, especially when fossil evidences fossil evidences are not present, when fossil evidences are not present. Okay, right. So now let's look at this numerical taxonomy. So here in case of numerical taxonomy, so every character will be given a code, okay, and these codes will be uh, put into computers. So here numerical taxonomy. So for every character they give a code. So for every character they give a code, okay, including the habit, the color, okay, the type of leaf, that whatever we have studied in case of morphology. Okay, we have studied already morphology of plants, anatomy of plants. Okay, so whether the plant is having vascular tissues, it doesn't have vascular tissues, so all that, okay, will be given. So different characters will be given a different number, and all that information will be fed into computers. So actually comparing a plant with another plant, okay, by taking these numbers is quite impossible, okay, by a person. So a person, if he does this, it's very difficult, okay, to compare. But if we feed this information to the computer, and computer can do this work very easily, okay, and it will tell that whether two plants are related or not at all related, or to what extent they are related. All that information, okay, the computer can tell it. So in such a way they make the programs in the computers also. So numerical taxonomy, for every character they give a code, a number. So in this case, okay, every character is given, okay, equal importance. So by doing in this way, we give equal importance to every character, right? And we can at a time compare hundreds of characters, okay, by using computers. Then coming to cytotaxonomy. So this cytotaxonomy is nothing but the cytological information. So it is cytological information. So what is this cytological information? This includes the number of chromosomes, the structure, okay, so it all depends on number of, okay, or I say chromosomal number. So chromosomal number, okay, then chromosomal, right, structure, and also the behavior, so will be considered, okay, all that will come under cytological information, okay. Cell information, especially the chromosomes, so that's the cytotaxonomy. So they are going to even consider this information, okay. Then coming to chemotaxonomy. So here in the chemotaxonomy, so they are going to take the chemical constituents of the cell, or chemical constituents of plants. So they are going to compare the chemical constituents of plants. So in algae, what is the cell wall composed of, okay, and how the cyanobacteria. So earlier the blue green algae were actually included under this algal group, but later they separated, okay, and now cyanobacteria is a part of kingdom Monera, and we are not considering it algae, right? So because when we studied the chemo or the chemical constituents of those cell walls, and then we came to know the cell wall composition is different, okay. So the chemical constituents of the plants are also they have considered, okay, so to group the plants. So this is these are different methods which will be very much useful when fossil evidences are not available, okay. So that's about little information on classification. So now let's look at the plant classification. So before I discuss the various groups of plants, I will give you an overall okay, plant kingdom classification, okay. So I'll just mention kingdom Plantae. So this kingdom Plantae is divided into two subkingdoms. So one I call it cryptogamy. So it's divided into two subkingdoms. So I'll just mention here subkingdom. So kingdom Plantae divided into two subkingdoms, Cryptogame and Phanerogame. Okay, Cryptogame and Phanerogame here. Okay, right. So here, where from the Greek, cryptos, which mean hidden. Okay, and game, which means marry, or gameo, which means marry. Okay, so cryptogame, okay, these are seedless plants. So these are seedless plants. Then coming to the phanerogame, okay, so in this case from the Greek, okay, phaneros, which means visible, okay, so these we have included under this subkingdom phanerogame, seeded plants, means the plants who produce seeds. And here the cryptogame includes the plants that don't have seeds. And this cryptogame is divided into three divisions. So divided into three divisions. So division Thallophyta, division Thallophyta, then division Bryophyta, and division Pteridophyta. Division Pteridophyta. Okay, and under the Thallophyta we have one subdivision, that is algae. So here in this case the algae, their body is not at all differentiated, so we say thallophytes. Of course we see similar situation in case of bryophytes. Later that part I will discuss in detail. Then coming to the seeded plants, so in this case we have one division. So this is Spermatophyta. So it has one division, it's called Spermatophyta. And this Spermatophyta is divided into two subdivisions. So it's divided into two subdivisions, and they are Gymnospermae and Angiospermae. So Gymnospermae and Angiospermae. And this group Gymnospermae has two classes. Okay, so they are, okay, monocotyledonae and dicotyledonae. So okay, dicotyledonae and monocotyledonae. Right, so this is the overall classification of plants, and among these, okay, the most primitive plants are algae. Okay, so these are the most primitive. I'm talking in case of the kingdom Plantae. Out of all this, okay, so these are the most primitive group of plants, and the monocotyledons are the most advanced group of plants. So monocotyledons include the most advanced group of plants, and algae includes the most primitive group of plants. Okay, so we will be studying, okay, especially algae, then bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms. So in detail, I'm going to discuss the characters and how they reproduce in case of algae, the bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. Okay, right. So I will end today's session. So in the next session, we will see in detail about the general characters of algae, okay, and examples in the next session.